Welcome to the Afterspin, opinions from thought leaders in our state. I want to ask John Hood and Rob Schofield. State School Superintendent Mark Johnson put up a new website for people to see how local school systems are spending their money. But the site's drawn a lot of criticism over the misleading and perhaps deceptive ways, some call it, it shows teacher salaries. Among other things, it tries to compare average teacher salaries with the median income from our state. Johnson says it's a fair comparison. Critics says it's comparing apples and oranges. What do you say and what do you think about this attempt, Rob?
Chris Nordstrom, who's a veteran education policy analyst, wrote a column on NC Policy Watch in which he sort of detailed these problems. Mark Johnson, to me, continues to strike me as sort of the dog who caught the bus. I mean, I feel as if he is someone who is a little bit over his head. He's not really in a position where he can be a loud champion of public education and adequate funding for it. So he's created a new website where he sort of recites some talking points and says, look how wonderful it is what we spend on education in this state. But the truth is...
Was that his point?
I think so. I think it's essentially a propaganda site. And the truth is that in North Carolina, spending is 5% where it was before the recession. 18 out of 24 allotments in the state for education are below where they were before the recession. And that's not much of a thing to brag about. So he's got generalities in there about, oh, we spend most of the state budget on education, but I don't think it's very compelling.
But a lot of the critics saying, wait a minute, here's our top educator in North Carolina, can't know the difference between mean and average.
Yes, exactly. That's a sixth grade math curriculum. Median and average.
Excuse me, yes.
Let's dial it down a little bit. All right.
Now we're going to hear the voice of common sense.
No, I'm just going to explain. There is certainly the case. Nordstrom is correct that it would be best to compare median to median or mean to mean. The difference is not very significant here. So while it is absolutely the case that in theory you should always make that, or in practice you should always do that, the difference between the mean and median is not significant here. It's a very small difference, so it doesn't matter in practical terms. The second point is this issue is much more complicated. And in fact, I thought Nordstrom had better criticisms elsewhere, because that one sort of doesn't go anywhere if you look at the numbers. But the discussion about, for example, who are we going to compare average teacher salaries to? Do you compare it to the general public? Do you compare it to people who have master's degrees and bachelor's degrees, or people who just have bachelor's degrees? I think he misstated the case there because he included master. He is citing evidence from other sources that are adjusting for how many of the people in the workforce have graduate degrees, which is not the point, because you don't have to have a graduate degree to be a teacher. And in fact, there's no relationship between having a graduate degree and being a good teacher. So that was a mistake. But these are complex, difficult issues. The response from the Department of Public Instruction was actually quite instructive, making some other points that, for example, you're going to compare a teacher who does not have a 50-week-a-year contract with other employees that do have 50-week-a-year contracts. You have to adjust it the other direction. It is a complicated matter. The website has value, but it is not the last word.
So I hear you saying you don't think much of this website. I hear you saying you do.
I think the bottom line is he's trying to show that, teachers have it great in North Carolina, and the teachers are marching with their feet to show that they don't. They know they don't.
This is not a point that Nordstrom made, but I have heard a number of other critics complaining, how dare he talk about average teacher salaries? Doesn't he know that lots of teachers don't make the average? So before we start making fun of Mark Johnson for not understanding basic concepts, how about that from teachers complaining, how dare he use average teacher pay? Not everybody makes average teacher pay.
Most make less because a few bump up the number.
Of course. Some make more, some make less, some make close to the average. That's what an average means.
I think we're all going to have to go back to school and learn our math terminology as well as how to calculate. I'll have to take my shoes off so we can count. Well, thank you for watching the Afterspin. We'll have more video all during the week on ncspin.com.